Welcome to Applied Logics. In this video, we will see how we can write a program to find smallest number between two given numbers. Let's say you got two numbers as a 10 and 20. In this case, your program should return 10 as the result. Okay, let's take one more example. If you have two numbers like 100 and 500, your program should say that 100 is the smallest among these two. So let's see how we can write the same program using Java. You can see I'm creating a solution file, solution.java. A Java file, you can see a class, public class solution which is there inside the file. Okay, so let's add main method, which is generally the entry point for any language, the main method. So to specific to Java, I'm adding string array of arguments as an input parameter to it. So this is the general syntax of main method, which is there inside a class. Okay, now let's declare two numbers. Now how we declare the two numbers? Yes, so we use int as a type and we'll give name to the number as a number 1. Okay, this is the variable name we are using, and I'm assigning 10 to it. Let's declare one more number, that is number 2, and let's assign 20 to it. So this is the values which we have taken in our first example. Okay, so in order to find the smallest number, we are actually interested in the comparison operation, right? So you end up with comparing whether 10 is smaller than 20 or 20 is smaller than 10, right? So in a nutshell, you are interested in a comparison. So in Java, we have comparison operators like less than, greater than. We have seen these in our school days, right? We just have to make use of these attributes in order to achieve our target. Okay, so let's see how we can make use of it. So for that, we need to use a if condition. Okay, and inside a if condition, we will check whether the number 1 is less than number 2. So what does that mean? If the number 1, we are checking whether the number 1 is less than, this is the less than operator. We are checking whether the number 1 is less than number 2. If that is the case, in that case, we can say that the number 1 is the smaller as compared to the number 2, right? So I'm simply printing the number 1 over here. Okay, else, when you will reach to the else loop, generally when your if part becomes false, you tend to go inside the else condition, right? So this is what the if else contract is. If is not working, or if becomes false, you end up inside else construct, right? So let's say in our example, if the number 1 is not less than number 2, what does that mean? It means number 2 is the smaller one or equal to, right? So in that case, we can say that we can simply print the number 2 as the result. Okay, I will add one more print statement which will say that the smallest number is. Okay, so I'll be adding some string, and the smallest number is. Okay, now let's see whether our program works or not. Okay, so I'll be opening a terminal. You can see I have opened the terminal and I need to compile the code. So Java C is the command for that, and then you have to pass the file name, so basically the path to the Java file. Okay, so I'm using Java C space solution.java. Once you hit enter, you will observe that earlier there was only one file that we have created. Now after compilation, we got one more file, that is .class file. So we get this file once you compile the code. Okay, now how you can run that? You have to run it with Java solution. Yeah, if you run it, you got the output like smallest number is 10. Okay, that's what we are expecting. Now let's go back to the code and update some numbers. Let's say, considering our second use case, that is 500, and simply 100. In this case 100 should be our answer. Let's see whether our program is able to do that or not. So here, as I have changed the values, I need to recompile the code, and I can do that with the help of javac solution.java command. Yes, I have compiled it. I have to run it back. Okay, I got the output which says smallest number is 100. Fine. So this code, whatever we have written inside main, is capable of saying that which one is the smallest one. Okay, but I'm going to refactor the code. What the refactoring means? Okay, so I'm going to create a new method in order to detect which one is the smaller and which one is the largest. The reason I'll be creating a new method is that it actually the best industry practice. Whenever you write a code, try to create more methods as possible as. Okay, the reason being, let's say you have been asked to write, let's say, a code to find the largest number as well, to find the second largest number, to find the product of the two numbers, to find the sum of the two numbers. Okay, you will go on adding all the code inside a main method itself, and over the period of time it might happen that your main method itself becomes too heavy, like it might contain hundreds or thousands of lines, right? In that case, finding a code, updating some syntax and all, it becomes really very difficult. So in order to avoid that, to make your code more readable and more maintainable, always try to create a methods. Okay, so what does that mean? Like, instead of this code, I mean, we will simply refactor it into a separate method. So I will create a method and I will return a number out of that method. So I'm planning to create a method which will take two numbers as the input and which will return the smallest among them as the result. So here, because of that, I'm changing the return type from void to int, because I'm planning to return the smallest number. Okay, and I will change the name of the methods to something like get smallest number. Okay, always follow the naming convention, that is camel case. If you are writing a code in Java, we generally follow the camel case naming convention. So if you look at the variable names like number one, O is the capital, T is the capital, that's what the camel case syntax is. Even if you look at the get smallest number, I'm using S as a capital and then N as the capital. The every starting word of, you can say, starting character of each word should be capital, except the first character, that is K. Okay, that's what the camel case rule is. Okay, and try to give meaningful name as much as possible. Okay, it helps you to understand what the code or what the function does, right, or what the function do. Because if I have renamed it to something like, let's say, xyz or function 1 or method 1, it still do the job, but it will not become a readable code. It will not be easy to understand, right? So always try to give a meaningful names. That is again a best industry practice. Okay, and as I said, I'm planning to take two numbers as an input. So you can have int1 that is integer n1 and integer n2 as the input numbers. Okay, you can make use of any meaningful variables over here as well. For this video, I'm using n1 and n2 as these are the input parameters. Okay, fine. Now inside this, we have to do the same stuff that we did. Okay, we need to compare, we need to do the comparison. Okay, so I will compare between two numbers, that is n1 and n2. Now what this if condition says, if number 1, that is n1, is less than n2, it means n1 is the smallest. So this is actually the result, right? So you can simply return n1. Once you get the result, you can simply return out of this if construct, right? Else if this condition false, in that case we can say that number n2 will be the smallest one. Similarly, we did it here. If you remember, we compared number 1 with number 2. If number 1 is less than number 2, we are printing the result, right? So instead of printing, I am sending result back to the main method, the one who will end up with calling this method, right? And similarly, from else construct, we were printing the number 2 So instead of printing it over here, I am returning that number back. Okay, so let's see how we can change the code. Okay, so I have removed our earlier implementation, and I have used a variable called as result equal to, I will call the method like get smallest number, and I will pass these two numbers, that is number 1 and number 2. Okay, and here I will simply add the result. Okay, now if you look at the main method, it now becomes neat and clear. Okay, look at it, like we have declared two numbers like number 1, number 2, then we are calling a method to get the smallest number. We are passing these two numbers and we are storing result inside a result variable, and we are displaying the result. Okay, now let's come back to our actual method, that is get smallest number. Here we are taking these two numbers as the input variables. We are doing the same comparison, and instead of printing, we are simply returning the numbers. Okay, now let's see if this implementation works. Okay, so I am using the same terminal. I'll be compiling the code as we have made changes to it, and I'm running it back. Okay, so you can see we received smallest number is 100. Perfect. Yeah, so with this method you can simply say that which one is the smaller among the two given numbers. If you still have any questions about this or about our implementation or about code, you can feel free and go ahead and add it into the comment section. We will look into it and we will try to answer most of them. Thank you.